In my family, success had a very specific, very non-negotiable roadmap: get perfect grades, go to a prestigious university, get a respectable corporate job, and climb the ladder. My older brother, Mark, followed that map perfectly. He was a first-class ticket, a blue-chip stock, a sure thing. Me, I took that map, set it on fire, and went joyriding in the wilderness. I dropped out of Stanford in my sophomore year to chase what my father called a silly little computer idea. To my family, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was a failure. The family's great, tragic disappointment. They had no idea my failure was about to be lauded as world-changing genius by the one person on earth they were most desperate to impress. If you've ever been the black sheep, the one who took the road less traveled while your family shook their heads from the safety of the highway, you're going to feel this one. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. The failure happened 10 years ago. I was at Stanford, a top student in their computer science program. I was on the exact path my family had laid out for me. But I had an idea that wouldn't let me sleep. It was a new way to organize and analyze massive sets of visual data, not just photos, but satellite imagery, medical scans, architectural blueprints, an idea for a piece of software that could teach itself to see patterns that the human eye couldn't. I called it Aperture. The idea consumed me. My classes, which I had once loved, now felt like a distraction. I spent every waking moment in the computer lab, fueled by cheap coffee and pure adrenaline, building a prototype. My grades, for the first time in my life, started to slip, and I had to make a choice: the safe, respectable path my family had chosen for me, or my own risky, uncertain, and brilliant one. I chose my path. I called a family meeting to tell them I was taking a leave of absence to start a company. The reaction was a nuclear event. "You're what, Makarkar?" my father had roared, his face turning a deep, alarming shade of red. "You are throwing your entire future away. We are not paying for Stanford so you can chase a silly idea." "I'm not asking you to pay for it," I had replied calmly. "I'm going to do it myself." My brother, Mark, who was then a recent Wharton graduate, already climbing the ladder at a major consulting firm, just looked at me with a smirk of pure, condescending pity. "I knew you couldn't handle the pressure," he said. "You're giving up. It's pathetic. Just admit you failed." They couldn't understand it, in their world. You don't leave a place like Stanford. You don't abandon the roadmap. They saw my decision not as an act of courage or ambition, but as an admission of defeat. And from that day forward, that became my official family narrative. Mark was the success. I was the failure. What they never knew, what they never bothered to ask about, was what happened next. I moved into a tiny apartment in Palo Alto with 2 other programmers who believed in my vision. We worked for 2 years, living off instant ramen and credit cards. We worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. It was the hardest, most grueling, and most exhilarating time of my life. And Aperture wasn't a failure. It was a quiet revolution. We didn't create a flashy social media app. We created a tool so powerful and so versatile that it was quickly adopted by industries I hadn't even considered. Medical research firms used it to identify cancer cells with unprecedented accuracy. Climate scientists used it to track deforestation from satellite images. And yes, major tech companies and government agencies used it for data analysis. The company exploded. And I hated the spotlight. As Aperture grew from a 3-person startup into a multi-million-dollar corporation, I realized I hated the part of the job that wasn't the work itself. I hated the interviews, the conferences, the endless meetings with investors. I was a creator, a problem solver. I wasn't a public figure. So I made another unconventional choice. I hired a brilliant, charismatic CEO named David Chen to be the public face of the company. I transitioned to the role of Chief Product Officer and Head of Innovation, to the world, and to my family. David was the visionary CEO of Aperture in the tech industry, however. The real story was a whispered legend. The true genius behind Aperture was its reclusive, anonymous founder, a person known only by her initials, C.L. Hayes, my initials, Clara Louise Hayes. My family, of course, had no idea. For the past 8 years, they have continued to treat me with a kind of gentle, pitying condescension. They see my nice apartment, my comfortable life, and they assume I must have a decent job as a programmer somewhere. A quiet, stable life that pales in comparison to my brother's high-powered, high-earning career. They still ask me, with sad, hopeful smiles, if I've ever considered going back to finish your degree. I never correct them. A part of me found their ignorance to be a quiet, satisfying irony. The phone call that would change everything came on a Monday morning. It was my mother, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "Clara, darling, you will not believe the news," she gushed. "Your brother is engaged to the most wonderful, most brilliant woman. We are just so thrilled." "Wow, Mom, that's great," I said, a genuine smile on my face. Mark could be a pain, but I wanted him to be happy. "She's perfect for him," my mother continued. "She's a doctor, well, not a medical doctor, a different kind. She's Dr. Evelyn Reed. She's some kind of big-shot research scientist in the tech world, a real genius. We're having a small dinner party on Saturday to properly meet her, and you simply must be there." Her voice then dropped into a familiar, cautious tone. "And please, darling," she said, "try not to, don't talk about the whole dropping out of college thing. Evelyn is a very accomplished woman. We want to make a good impression." I hung up the phone, a strange, cold feeling prickling at the back of my neck. Dr. Evelyn Reed. The name sounded familiar. I opened my laptop and typed her name into the search bar. The results flooded my screen. Dr. Evelyn Reed was not just a research scientist. She was the head of the AI Ethics and Development Division at a major rival tech firm. She was a legend in my field. I had read her papers. I had cited her work. She was one of the few people on Earth whose intellect I genuinely admired. And then I saw an interview with her from a recent tech journal. The headline read, "Dr. Evelyn Reed on the future of AI and the one company she admires most." My heart began to pound. I clicked the link. I scrolled down the page until I found the quote. "There are a lot of brilliant people in this industry." She was quoted as saying, "But the work being done by the team at Aperture and by its mysterious founder, C.L. Hayes, is on another level entirely. Their approach to data analysis is revolutionary. I consider the founder to be one of the greatest minds of our generation. I would give anything to meet them one day." I leaned back in my chair, my mind reeling. My brother's fiancée, the brilliant woman my family was desperate to impress, was, for all intents and purposes, my biggest fan. And they were about to have us both over for dinner. This was going to be very, very interesting. The week leading up to the Meet Evelyn dinner party was a masterclass in my family's particular brand of high anxiety. Image-obsessed neurosis. My mother, Victoria, went into a full-scale panic. She had the caterers change the menu 3 times. She had the house deep cleaned twice. She even bought a new, ridiculously expensive bottle of wine that she kept sending me pictures of. This is a 1982 Bordeaux. The text read, "Dr. Reed will surely appreciate a fine vintage." This wasn't just a dinner party. It was a performance. It was an elaborate stage production designed to prove one thing, that their family, and by extension, their perfect son, Mark, was worthy of a woman as brilliant and accomplished as Dr. Evelyn Reed. My role in this production, as it was made explicitly clear to me through a series of gentle phone calls, was to be a silent stagehand. "Clara, darling," my mother began, in a phone call on Wednesday. "About Saturday night, let's just try to keep the conversation light and positive. Shall we no talk about your decision to leave Stanford, or your various little app ideas that never went anywhere. Evelyn is a very serious academic and a leader in her field. We don't want her to think our family isn't accomplished." On Thursday, my father called with his own piece of advice. "Listen to your mother, Clara," he said, his voice gruff. "Just let Mark and Evelyn do most of the talking. They have so much in common. Your role is just to smile and be supportive. That's all you need to do." And on Friday, my brother Mark sent me the final, condescending text. "Hey sis, really looking forward to you meeting Evelyn. She's the real deal. Try to keep up. Okay, and please, for the love of God, don't wear one of your nerdy hoodies with the weird coat on it. The nerdy hoodie he was referring to was my old favorite sweatshirt from my college coding club. I hadn't worn it in years, but the jab was clear. Be normal, be quiet, don't be yourself, don't embarrass us. The old me would have been wounded by their lack of faith. The old me would have been filled with a helpless, simmering anger. But the new me, the me who had just read that Evelyn Reed considered me one of the greatest minds of our generation, just felt a sense of calm, almost clinical amusement. They were so busy trying to produce a play for Evelyn. They had no idea that I was the one whose work she had been admiring all along. The irony was so thick, so delicious, it was almost a meal in itself. I decided I wouldn't force the issue. I wouldn't walk in and announce my identity. That was too easy, too theatrical. I would do exactly what they asked. I would be the quiet, failed sister. I would let them stage their little play, and I would let the universe, in its infinite and often hilarious wisdom, handle the rest. On the afternoon of the party, just before I started getting ready, I had a scheduled video conference with my CEO, David Chen. It was a brief, powerful reminder of my real life. Good news, he said, his face clear and professional on my screen. The board has unanimously approved your proposal for the Aperture Health Initiative. They said the preliminary data from your diagnostic algorithm is revolutionary. The stock is up 12% on the news alone. Congratulations. CL. You've done it again. Thank you, David, I said, a genuine smile on my face. Let's move forward with phase 2. We ended the call, and I stood up from my desk. In one world, I was C.L. Hayes, the visionary founder whose work was changing the world. In the other, I was Clara, the disappointing daughter who was being warned not to embarrass her family at a dinner party. The duality was jarring, but today, it just felt funny. I got ready for the party. I didn't choose a flashy dress. I chose a simple, elegant, and understated black sheath dress. I wanted to look polished, but I also wanted to fade into the background, just as they'd asked. But I did choose one small, secret act of defiance. I put on the bracelet. It was a simple, custom-made silver band that I almost never took off to anyone else. It looked like a modern, abstract design, but to me, and to anyone who knew the history of my company, it was a secret language. It was a thin strip of metal, elegantly engraved with a single line of binary code, the core, foundational line from my original Aperture algorithm, the line of code that had started it all. It was my own private joke, a nerdy hoodie in disguise. As I drove to my parents' house, I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't dreading the evening anymore. I was an anthropologist, about to observe a fascinating and deeply flawed tribe in its natural habitat. I was a theater critic, ready to watch the first act of a play that I knew was about to have a very surprising twist ending. I rang the doorbell. My mother swung the door open, her face a mask of anxious hospitality. She ushered me in, her eyes doing a quick, critical scan of my appropriate black dress before she nodded with approval. The house was buzzing. I could hear my brother's loud, confident laughter coming from the living room. I could hear a woman's voice, warm and intelligent, responding, "Evelyn." My mother leaned in and whispered in my ear, a final, urgent command. "Now, you be on your best behavior, Chloe," she said, accidentally using my name from a previous draft of this story, her mind clearly flustered. "Don't you dare do anything to mess this up for your brother." "Don't worry, Mom," I said with a serene smile. I wouldn't dream of it. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. The actors were all in place. The stage was set. The dinner party was about to begin. I walked into the living room, a polite, neutral smile fixed on my face. The room was a shrine to my brother's success. His Wharton diploma was framed on the wall. His photo with the CEO of his firm was on the mantelpiece, and he himself stood in the center of the room, beaming, with his arm possessively around a woman who was, I had to admit, incredibly impressive. Dr. Evelyn Reed was tall, elegant, and radiated an aura of sharp, effortless intelligence. She had a warm smile and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. My family was practically buzzing around her, a flock of pigeons vying for the attention of a beautiful, exotic bird. "Evelyn, darling, let me get you another glass of wine," my mother cooed, Evelyn, I was just telling the partners at my firm about your latest research paper. My father boomed. Mark, my brother, finally noticed me. Oh, Evelyn, he said, his voice a little too loud. Come meet my little sister, Clara. He was using me as a prop, a way to show off his magnanimity. Look at me, so successful, and yet so kind to my aimless, drop-out sister. Evelyn turned to me, her warm smile unwavering. It's so lovely to meet you, Clara, she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. There was no flicker of recognition in her eyes, which was both a relief and, strangely, a small disappointment. She saw me just as my family wanted her to see me, the quiet, unremarkable sister. The dinner party was the most excruciating performance of the Evans family values I had ever had the misfortune to attend. It was a 2-hour-long symphony of praise for Mark and Evelyn, with a recurring, painful counter-melody about my own failures. Mark was just made the youngest vice president in the history of his division, my father announced proudly. For what I knew was the third time that week, a true go-getter, a born leader. And Evelyn, my mother, would chime in. To be the head of a major research division at her age, it's just incredible. You two are such a power couple. Then would come the inevitable pivot to me. We tried to instill that same strong work ethic in both our children, my father would say with a heavy, theatrical sigh, looking at me with a sad shake of his head. Mark, of course, took to it like a fish to water. Clara chose a more creative path. That phrase, creative path, was my family's euphemism for unemployed and living off a trust fund we don't know about. We just want both our children to be happy and secure, my mother would add, her voice full of a gentle pity that was worse than any insult. Mark has his feet planted so firmly on the ground. We're still hopeful that Clara will find her footing soon. They were painting me as their charity case, their cautionary tale, their great ambitious project that had unfortunately failed to yield a return on investment. I just sat there, smiling my polite, vacant smile, taking small, precise sips of my water. Inside, a cold, quiet rage was building, a rage so intense it felt like a physical pressure behind my eyes. I was enduring it, just as I had endured 1,000 other slights and insults over the years. I was waiting for the evening to be over. Evelyn, to her credit, seemed a little uncomfortable with the dynamic. She was an intelligent, perceptive woman, and she could clearly sense the tension. She tried, several times, to draw me into the conversation. So, Mark tells me you do some freelance design work. Clara, she asked kindly, her eyes warm and inquisitive. Before I could answer, my brother jumped in. Oh, it's just little stuff, he said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Websites for local businesses, that kind of thing. She's very artistic. He said the word artistic like it was a diagnosis for a chronic, incurable disease. I just smiled. I let him talk. I let them all perform their parts. I let them paint their picture of me for their prized guest. The quiet failure, the dropout daughter, the girl with the wasted potential. The dinner was finally, mercifully, drawing to a close. The dessert plates had been cleared, and the conversation was beginning to lull. I knew I couldn't endure another moment of their condescending pity. In a moment of self-preservation, I decided to change the subject, to pivot the conversation to the one person at the table I genuinely respected. Dr. Reed, I began, my voice clear and steady, cutting through a story my father was telling about his golf handicap. Every head turned to me, surprised I had spoken. I had a chance to read your recent paper on the ethical frameworks for generative AI. I thought your points on data sovereignty were brilliant. What do you see as the next big challenge in the field? It was the first time all night I had used my real voice, the voice of a person who read academic papers, who understood complex systems, who had an opinion that wasn't about the weather or a local restaurant. And I saw a change in Evelyn's face. Her polite, social smile was replaced by a look of genuine, engaged excitement. She lit up. That's an excellent question, she said, leaning forward, her eyes shining with intellectual passion. Most people just focus on the killer robot narrative, but the real immediate challenge is algorithmic bias and the concentration of power. The big players are building closed systems, and that's dangerous. She launched into an enthusiastic, brilliant analysis of the state of the industry. My father and brother's eyes began to glaze over, but I was completely captivated. We were speaking the same language. That's why I have so much admiration for some of the smaller, more innovative companies out there, she continued, her voice full of passion. The ones who are trying to build a better, more ethical model. There's one company in particular. My heart began to pound. I knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, what she was about to say. It's a company called Aperture, she said, a look of reverence on her face. I don't know if you've heard of it. They're very private, but their approach to data analysis, their core algorithm, it's a work of pure genius. It's going to change everything. My mother and father were nodding along, looking impressed, having absolutely no idea what she was talking about. My brother was trying to look knowledgeable. And their founder, Evelyn went on, shaking her head with a look of awe, is a complete mystery. No one knows who they are. They go by the initials C.L. Hayes. Whoever they are, they're one of the greatest minds of our generation. She looked at me, still flushed with the excitement of the conversation. Sorry, she said with a laugh. I get a little carried away when I talk about Aperture. I'm a bit of a fangirl. I just looked at her, my face a perfect, calm mask, but inside, my entire world was tilting. The dinner party I had been dreading, the one where I was supposed to be the embarrassing family secret, had just taken a very, very interesting turn. The name of my company, Aperture, hung in the air of my parents' pretentious dining room like a ghost no one else could see. My family, completely oblivious, just nodded along, impressed by Evelyn's passionate monologue. My brother, Mark, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to align himself with her brilliance. Aperture, yes, of course, he said, with a knowing, confident nod, as if he followed the tech industry closely. I've read about them. Very disruptive. A real market leader. He had no idea he was talking about the silly little computer idea he had so mercilessly mocked 10 years ago. Evelyn, thrilled to have found a seemingly knowledgeable person to talk to, turned her full attention to him. Oh, you follow their work. Isn't their approach to machine learning just revolutionary? The way their core algorithm can analyze visual data sets is unlike anything else on the market. It's not just an incremental improvement. It's a quantum leap forward. My father, not to be outdone, chimed in. That's what it takes to succeed, he boomed, gesturing with his wine glass. A real vision, a willingness to take risks. That's what I've always told my children. You have to be a leader, not a follower. He said this while looking pointedly in my direction, a subtle, but clear, reinforcement of his favorite narrative mark. The leader, Clara, the follower who had failed to launch. The irony was so thick, so rich, it was almost suffocating. They were praising my work, my vision, my success, while simultaneously using it as a weapon to belittle me. They were celebrating the anonymous founder, C.L. Hayes, as a genius, while the actual C.L. Hayes was sitting right there at their table, being treated like the family disappointment. I just sat there, a quiet, amused observer, sipping my water. I let them talk. I let them dig their own graves with their own ignorant praise. Evelyn, now fully engaged, continued to sing the praises of my company. And their founder, she said, her voice full of a genuine, academic reverence, is my absolute hero. The way they've structured the company, the ethical guidelines they've put in place, their commitment to keeping the core technology out of the hands of bad actors. It's a model for the entire industry. They're not just a brilliant engineer, they're a brilliant leader. She turned to me, a sudden, inclusive thought striking her. I'm sorry, Clara. We're probably boring you with all this tech talk, she said kindly. Not at all, I said, my voice a calm, even whisper. I find it fascinating. It's just that, she continued, a look of pure, intellectual passion on her face. The founder of Aperture has managed to solve a problem I've been working on for years. The problem of algorithmic drift. Their core code has a self-correcting mechanism that is just, it's poetry, it's a work of art. I would give anything to just sit in a room with them for an hour and pick their brain. My brother Mark puffed out his chest. Well, if you ever want an introduction, he said with a smug, confident smile. I have some connections in the venture capital world. I could probably make a few calls. See if I can get a meeting with this C.L. Hayes for you? The offer was so ludicrous, so breathtakingly arrogant. I almost choked on my water. My brother, the man who thought I was a failed programmer, was now offering to get his brilliant fiancée a meeting with me. Evelyn's eyes widened with genuine excitement. Mark, could you really? That would be the professional opportunity of a lifetime. Of course, darling, he said with a magnanimous wave of his hand. Anything for you. The dinner party finally, mercifully, began to wind down. As we were all standing up from the table, Evelyn turned to me again. She had been so warm, so kind to me all evening. Despite my family's best efforts to paint me as an uninteresting loser, it was so lovely to meet you, Clara, she said. I know we didn't get much of a chance to talk. I'd love to get together with you again soon, just the two of us. I get the feeling we have more in common than you might think. I'd like that very much, I said. A genuine smile on my face for the first time all night. She was about to turn away when her eyes fell on the simple silver bracelet on my wrist, the one engraved with the single line of binary code. It was a nervous habit of mine. I often found myself tracing the engraved lines with my thumb when I was feeling stressed or anxious. I had been doing it all night. She frowned slightly, a look of intense, academic concentration on her face. That's a beautiful bracelet, she said, her voice a little distracted. The design is so familiar. She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the engraved code. Her brilliant, analytical mind, the mind that could deconstruct complex algorithms, was now focused on the piece of jewelry on my wrist. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. She looked from the bracelet to my face and back to the bracelet. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know she was solving beginning to click into place. The initials, C.L. Hayes. My name, Clara Louise Hayes. The artistic sister who had dropped out of Stanford's computer science program. The quiet woman at the table who had just asked a surprisingly insightful question about AI ethics. Her eyes, which had been warm and friendly, now widened with a look of dawning, electrifying, and utterly disbelieving shock. Her mouth fell open slightly. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the very first time. And then she whispered the words that would bring my family's entire, carefully constructed world crashing down around them. The words that would change my life forever. The silence that followed Evelyn's enthusiastic praise of Aperture and its mysterious founder was, for me, thick with a delicious, heart-pounding irony. My family was completely oblivious, still basking in the glow of my brother's magnanimous offer to get a meeting for his brilliant fiancée. They were so caught up in their own performance. They had completely missed the look on Evelyn's face as she stared at my wrist. Her gaze was no longer just friendly. It was sharp, analytical, and intensely focused. The brilliant mind that deconstructed complex ethical frameworks was now aimed at the simple silver bracelet I wore. That's a beautiful bracelet, she had said, her voice distracted. The design is so familiar. My brother, Mark, ever eager to please, saw a chance to swoop in. Oh, that old thing, he said with a dismissive laugh. Clara's had that forever. It's some nerdy computer thing. She probably made it herself in one of her phases. But Evelyn wasn't listening to him. She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the single line of elegant, engraved binary code. Time seemed to slow down. I could feel my own heartbeat, a steady, powerful drum against my ribs. This was it, the collision of my two worlds. Her eyes widened, first with disbelief, then with a look of dawning, electrifying recognition. I could literally see the data points connecting in her brilliant mind. Clara Louise Hayes, C.L. Hayes, the dropout computer science major from Stanford, the woman who had asked a surprisingly insightful question about AI ethics. The strange, quiet sister with the nerdy bracelet. It all added up to an impossible, yet undeniable, conclusion. Her mouth fell open slightly. She looked up from the bracelet to my face, her eyes now shining with a look of pure, unadulterated awe. That code, she whispered, her voice a reverent hush that cut through the dying chatter of the dinner party. That's the initialization sequence for the aperture prime algorithm, the original string from the beta version, before it was streamlined for commercial release. My family just stared at her, completely bewildered. They had no idea what she was talking about. Evelyn ignored them. She looked at me, her face a mask of stunning realization. "Oh my God," she breathed. C.L. Hayes, Clara, Louise, Hayes. She said my full name like she was piecing together a sacred, forgotten text. You're C.L. Hayes," she asked, her voice now rising with a joyful, incredulous energy that filled the silent room. "You're the founder of Aperture." The question, the accusation, the revelation, it hung in the air like a lightning strike. My brother was the first to react, with a short, sharp, mocking laugh. "Evelyn, what on earth are you talking about?" he scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. "That's my sister, Clara. She dropped out of Stanford. Remember, she's not the founder of anything except maybe a book club." My mother nervously added, "Evelyn, dear, you must be mistaken. Clara, she's very artistic, but she's not a CEO." But Evelyn wasn't listening to them. She was still staring at me, her eyes shining with the pure, unadulterated delight of a fan who has just come face to face with their hero, and I didn't have to say a word. My silence was my confirmation. Evelyn, the one person in that room whose opinion carried unimpeachable weight, whose brilliance they had been fawning over all night, was about to become my ultimate, unexpected advocate. "It is you," she breathed, a massive, brilliant smile spreading across her face. She completely ignored my spluttering brother and my horrified parents. "I can't believe it. I am standing here talking to C.L. Hayes, the woman whose white paper on heuristic data analysis is required reading for my entire department. The paper I have personally read at least a dozen times. It changed everything for me." She was gushing now, her professional composure completely gone, replaced by the pure, unadulterated joy of a true fangirl. "Your work," she continued, her voice full of a passion that made my family shrink, "is the most elegant, most revolutionary work being done in our field. You are a legend." I watched as the truth of her words, the truth of my life, finally, brutally, landed on my family. Their faces were a symphony of devastation. My father's jaw was slack, his face pale with shock. My mother looked like she was about to faint. And my brother, Mark, my brother, his handsome, smug face had crumpled into a mask of pure, horrified humiliation. The failure he had pitied, the dropout he had mocked, the little sister he had just patronizingly offered to get a meeting for, was a legend, a genius, the personal hero of the brilliant woman he was trying so desperately to impress. The power dynamic in the room had not just been inverted, it had been utterly and completely obliterated. I finally found my voice. I gave Evelyn a small, genuine smile. "I'm the one who's a fan of your work, Dr. Reed," I said quietly. Then I let my gaze drift over to my brother, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I gave him a cool, devastatingly calm smile of my own. "So, Mark," I said, my voice as sweet as honey and as sharp as a razor. "About that meeting with the founder of Aperture you were going to get for Evelyn," I paused, savoring the moment. "Do you think you can still get me in Harty?" My sarcastic question to my brother. "So, Mark, about that meeting. Do you think you can still get me in, hung in the dead?" Silent air of the dining room. He just stared at me, his handsome, confident face, the face of the family's success story, completely blank with a look of pure, horrified shock. He looked like a man who had just confidently stepped off a curb and found himself falling into the Grand Canyon. The spell was broken. The dinner party, or what was left of it, imploded. Evelyn, my new, brilliant, and incredibly powerful ally, let out a delighted laugh. She completely ignored the emotional carnage of my family and pulled up a chair right next to me, her eyes shining with the pure, unadulterated excitement of a scientist who has just discovered a new species. "I cannot believe it," she said, her voice a low, excited buzz, speaking to me as if we were the only two people in the room. "C.L. Hayes, in the flesh. I have to ask you about your approach to heuristic analysis in the Aperture algorithm. Is it true you built the foundational code on a modified version of the B-tree file system. Because if so, it's absolutely revolutionary. And just like that, while my family was having a collective, silent, nervous breakdown, Evelyn and I began to talk. And I mean, really talk. We talked about neural networks and quantum computing and the ethical implications of AI. We sketched out ideas on a napkin. We argued. We laughed. We built on each other's ideas. It was the most exhilarating, intellectually stimulating conversation I had had in my entire life. I was no longer the disappointing daughter, the quiet sister. I was an equal, a peer, a founder. My family just watched, completely sidelined, their faces a mixture of confusion, shame, and a dawning, terrible respect. Their world had a rigid hierarchy, and they had just witnessed it being completely and irrevocably demolished. The person they were so desperate to impress was now completely ignoring them, utterly captivated by the one person they had spent a decade dismissing. The few remaining guests, friends of my parents, quickly and quietly made their excuses and fled, not wanting to be anywhere near the fallout zone. Eventually, it was just us, my family, me, and my new friend, Evelyn. It was my father who finally found his voice, though it was a weak, trembling version of his usual booming authority. "Clara," he began, his voice hoarse. We had no idea. Founder, a CEO. Why didn't you tell us any of this?" The question was so perfectly, predictably, them. It wasn't an apology. It was an accusation. An accusation that I had somehow deceived them by not sharing a success they would have never believed in anyway. I finally turned my attention away from Evelyn and looked at my father. My voice was calm, my anger gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable certainty. "You didn't know," I said. "Because you never asked. You never once asked me a single, genuine question about my work. You just assumed. You assumed I was a failure because I didn't follow your narrow, prescribed path. You had a narrative about me, the dropout, the disappointment, and you were comfortable with it. My reality was an inconvenience to your story." I stood up. The evening now officially over for me. Evelyn stood up with me. The dynamic we used to have, the one where I am the child seeking your approval, is over. I said to all of them, my life, my work, and my success are not up for your review or your judgment anymore. You will treat me with respect. If you can do that, perhaps we can build a new kind of relationship. If you can't, I shrugged, then we won't. The choice is entirely yours. Evelyn and I left together, still talking excitedly about a potential collaboration between our two companies. We left them standing there, three silent, stunned figures in their perfect dining room, amidst the ruins of their own making. The aftermath of that dinner was a quiet, seismic shift. My brother, Mark, I heard, was profoundly humbled. His brilliant fiancée, the woman he had brought home like a trophy, now saw him in a new, less flattering light. Their relationship, I'm told, is now undergoing a significant restructuring of its own. My parents have tried to reach out. The calls are different now, full of a hesitant, fearful respect. They want to understand my world now. They want in. I am polite, but distant. I am teaching them, slowly, what a real boundary looks like. My family said I failed, but I learned that failure and success are not what other people say about you. They are what you build for yourself when no one is looking. For 10 years, they tried to fit me into a small, suffocating box labeled disappointment. They had no idea I was busy building my own universe outside of it. The most satisfying part of that night wasn't proving them wrong. It wasn't the look of shock on their faces. As sweet as that was, it was the quiet, profound realization that their opinion, the one that I had craved for so long, the one that had caused me so much pain, simply didn't matter anymore. And that, I've discovered, is the only kind of success worth having.